Hello everybody, it's Hannah Rose again from Briar Patch ASMR, and this is Chapter 3 of Dulcie's Taste of Magic. As Dulcie left the kitchen, fairies were flying to the tea room for lunch, but Dulcie didn't want to be anywhere near Ginger or her biscuits. Slowly she wandered through the home tree. Before long, she found herself outside the library. She said, I never have enough time to read, but now, she sighed, now I have all the time in the world. She tried to look on the bright side. I can learn so much about everything. Dulcie flitted to the history section. The History of Neverland, she read. She pulled the book from a shelf. This sounds interesting. She flew to another set of shelves. Here's a gardening book. After I read this, I can share some ideas with Lily. Next she took a book about fairy holidays, and one that told the legend of the first Never Fairy. She stacked the books on a table without opening any. When she glanced up, the cooking section was right in front of her. Well, she said happily, here I am. There's quite a cute picture here of her pulling books. Very cute indeed. Okay, let's keep going. Right where I belong. If she couldn't bake, at least she could read about baking. She opened book after book. It felt good to see the recipes. She knew them all so well. Each one was like an old friend. Suddenly, a piece of paper fluttered down from a high shelf right past Dulcie's nose. She picked it up. It felt heavier than leaf paper. Its edges were curled, and it was yellow. It seemed ancient. That's it, Dulcie realized. The paper was parchment, a material used by fairies long ago. She blew off a layer of dust. Clearly, this piece of parchment hadn't been read by anyone in years. She studied it carefully. Why, it's written in leaf lettering. Long before, fairies didn't have the regular alphabet. They used leaf symbols instead of letters. It was such an old style of writing. Fairies almost never used it anymore, and Dulcie's leaf symbol reading was rusty. She shook her head in frustration. Perhaps a little light would help. She edged closer to the window and squinted at the symbols. That first one looks like a C, she murmured. Then O, then M. She translated letter by letter. Then she took a pencil and leaf paper and wrote out each one. It spelled comfort cake. Comfort cake? Dulcie said out loud. Why, I've never heard of it. It must be an ancient recipe, she thought. Something very old, but at the same time new and different to her. And maybe, just maybe, it had some ancient magic to it too. Dulcie's heart beat quickly. She was growing more and more excited. An extraordinary cake, she translated, that when baked will... The rest of the sentence was rubbed off. The words were impossible to make out. There were no directions after it, and as far as she could tell, just one ingredient was listed. The recipe wasn't a recipe at all. Dulcie's heartbeat slowed. Her excitement faded. If only she could make this cake. If only she could bring something to Neverland that she had been missing for so long. She sat on the floor to figure out the rest of the symbols. 3, she wrote carefully. 3. The first word was 3. Then came sacks, then flour. 3 sacks flour. Dulcie shook her head. The cake only needed flour? And plain, ordinary flour at that? That wasn't magical at all. There had to be more. Dulcie turned the parchment this way and that, but there were no more clues. Well, with that, she was supposed to be relaxing anyway. She shouldn't be thinking about baking so much as a cookie, much less an ancient cake. but Dulcie couldn't put the parchment back on the shelf. She couldn't leave it behind. It didn't feel right. She slipped the recipe between her books and left the library. And with that, we have ended chapter 3. And chapter 4 will be uploaded very soon. Have a good night.